Welcome back to Cities on Console. Welcome if you're new. Today we'll be reacting to the 7th featured highlights video, and this week we are talking about maps and themes. Of course, there will surely be more maps and themes released throughout the game's life cycle with add-ons and DLCs, but for now we are finally getting our first real look at what we'll be starting with in the Cities Skylines 2 base game. But before getting into the video, I want to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and to drop a like if you end up enjoying today's video or finding it informative. And, as always, please also feel free to drop a dislike if you don't enjoy the video, as any and all engagement is welcome and helps me improve the channel and make more of the content you all find helpful, entertaining, and worthwhile. But, without further ado, let's get into this week's video.
It's easy to forget how much our day-to-day is shaped by where we live.
I want to go ahead and pause here to just take in what all we're seeing in the opening of the video. The landscape, vegetation, environment all show significant improvements from the first game. We've talked at length about the trees, the sky, lighting, reflections, water, all those things already. But one thing I want to bring to attention is the look of the mountains and hills here. In the original Cities Skylines, these mountains would probably look really bad. You had that ugly discoloration and tearing you'd experience when there was too much of a slope. Here, you definitely have the dirt colors versus the actual grass colors and all that. That's fine. But they've designed it in a way that makes sense and looks natural. I don't think we'll have to spend so much time on landscaping to avoid little things like that in Cities Skylines 2. And as a console player, I really appreciate and look forward to that.
But how our world looks, feels, and changes sets the scene for our lived experience. It's the same for the people in your city. And in Cities Skylines 2, the world is a whole lot bigger. You can now build on an area 5 times bigger than before.
So we've known for a while that the buildable area will be about 5 times that of what we had in the first game. That is, if you are only talking about the vanilla base game. With the 81 tile mod for modded PC players, Cities Skylines 2 maps will actually be a bit smaller to start with than what they'll have been used to in Cities 1. But that said, if you're a vanilla or console player like myself, this is a massive improvement. Even what we can see in this shot here was not possible for us with Cities Skylines. With the smaller towns off to the right, the airport all the way to the top that you can see there, we've never been able to build to this scale, and that is something I'm super excited for in the new game. Honestly, I know we're watching these videos and getting into these dev diaries and learning more about the game literally every week right now, and I'm excited for basically all of it, don't get me wrong, as I'm sure most of you watching are too, but if I could have improved one single thing, and only one single thing, in the original Cities Skylines, it would have been the quality of maps and the buildable area of those maps. So this is absolutely huge for me.
Equivalent to 159 square kilometers. That's bigger than some countries. Maps are composed of individual tiles. Connect them to create a sweeping urban jungle, or don't connect them to develop interesting little pockets of life.
This is a literal game changer. I couldn't even hazard a guess at the number of times I've wanted a small area for my city, but had to purchase a tile that is mostly ridiculously non-buildable areas like crazy mountain peaks or even just literally open sea, just water that I can't build on, do anything with, just to get a tiny corner or edge of that tile to continue developing my city like I want to. Or even purchase a tile I didn't want at all, or use at all, so that I could get to the next one that I did want, because it was adjacent. You had to buy connected tiles. And going back to what I said earlier, as a vanilla or console player, this was just torture, because in addition to that annoyance, you could only unlock 9 tiles total to begin with. So it was such a brutal thing to have to waste one of those tiles or multiple tiles for such a reason. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to be able to unlock tiles as and when and how I need them, and not just because they're needed to get to some other tiles that I actually want to use. So, again, very excited if you can't tell by my little rants here.
You can unlock 441 tiles on each map, but you'll have 9 to work with when you begin your city building.
I really like this as well. We can unlock up to 441 tiles total. So we already knew that, but we also now know, and I don't think we knew this before, that there are actually 529 tiles in total. We know this because if you count across, the map is 23 by 23, and 23 squared is 529, right? Anyway, so you definitely can't unlock all of the tiles, but because they're so small, and they don't have to be adjacent or connected to tiles you already own, although you can't literally unlock the entire map, you practically can. You might run into an issue here and there with unlocking some tiles in the late game when, you get a new idea and you wish you'd unlocked some others instead, but I don't think it will really be a pain point like it was in Cities 1 at least.
Reach milestones to unlock more. When you do, choose tiles that best serve your expansion plans.
So we get our first look at the milestones here, and there are so many now. It looks like we have two sorts of categories though. As you can see, Grand Village, Big Town, all of those are kind of bolded, capitalized, and highlighted to stand out a bit. But each of those, I guess you could say primary milestones, has secondary milestones, like going from a tiny village to small, and then to large, and then to a grand village before then being promoted to a town rather than a village altogether, and so on, right? I really like that, and we can also see that once we reach Tiny Town, in particular, we get a ton of cash, some new housing types, access to vegetable farming, which I find interesting, coal mining, and even mailboxes, which is definitely a new facet of the postal service system that we did not have in the original game. So there are now so many things to unlock, though, that this makes sense to break down the milestones and spread them out a bit more. So I like that. I think that's a welcome change as well.
Before you click, preview the total buildable area, what natural resources are available, and the cost of that tile. The expanded map inspires you to think big, but remember to think up. Height limits have increased too, freeing you to carve a city higher in the sky than ever before.
This is quite cool too. I never really built very high in Cities 1, aside from some nature reserves with some cool overlooks and lookout towers or something. But I always thought it'd be really cool to build some little mountaintop towns. It sounds like that will be more of an option in Cities 2, and even encouraged by the fact that they're deciding to highlight it in this video today. So yeah, very cool.
Building on this scale also invites you to think outside of the box, literally. Create connections to cities beyond the edge of your map to open up trade routes that can accelerate your city's growth.
I don't exactly love the look of this. I definitely like that we can create our own outside connections now, but I hope that it doesn't look like this in-game, where you zoom out to look at your city and you see railroad tracks and roads and highways just stopping in what appears to be the middle of nothing for no reason, with trains and vehicles magically appearing and disappearing. That could definitely take away from the immersion, but we'll just have to see whether it's actually like this or not once we get our hands on the games. But I thought that was worth mentioning. Like in this particular screen, that looks a little ridiculous, and I definitely don't love it.
Before you select a map, look at where it sits on the globe. Is it north or south of the equator? And which hemisphere is it in? Check out how much of the map can be built on, which natural resources it has, and what, if any, connections already exist to neighboring cities.
So another thing I want to mention here, it sounded like before that the base game was coming with 12 maps. This now confirms otherwise. Well, sort of. I'll explain what I mean. The base game technically comes with 10 maps. You only get the Tampa Ray map if you pre-order the game, and you only get the San Francisco map as part of the expansion pass. And looking back, the base game of Cities 1 came with 12 maps, so it feels a bit weird that they're still doing 12 total for Cities 2, but 2 of those are incentives for pre-orders and expansion passes. If the base game was going to come with 12, like the first one did, and then maybe you got up to 14 with the bonus maps, that'd feel a little cooler in my opinion, because this just looks to me like they might have planned 12 again, but decided to axe 2 of them and offer them as bonuses instead. I don't know, maybe I'm totally out of line for thinking that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. That's kind of the optics, how it looks, at least to me personally. I don't know if anyone agrees or not. But that said, if the maps are more playable than they were in Cities 1, then we're still going to come out ahead by a lot. So I don't want to complain too much, but I thought, again, that was worth mentioning.
Found a map you like? Click and give your city a name. This is also your chance to change the default theme if you want to. There are 2 themes, European and North American. Themes shape the look and feel of your city, from street markings to cop cars.
And we get a look at our map options here. And this is all pretty familiar, but I do like that there's a tutorials option. I imagine this will be handy for a first city build to get used to all the changes and break some of the old Cities 1 habits for those of us that played the first game that might not work as well in Cities 2. So again, everything looks pretty familiar, but I do think that's cool that there's sort of a tutorial-led option there. I'll definitely be using that for my first build as I'm learning the game.
The biggest difference is the architectural style of residential and commercial buildings. You can add buildings from the other theme when zoning your city. This lets you pepper European buildings in your North American city, and vice versa. Still, the theme you choose dominates the appearance of your city.
I really like the architectural improvements here. If you've been around the channel for a while, you probably know how much I hated the European theme in Cities 1. I hated the buildings, the service buildings and schools, the houses, the black water and like baby vomit green of the grass in the European maps as well. Literally just like everything. I don't know why, but I hated everything about the European side of the game. But that is totally different in Cities 2. I really like the look of these European buildings, and I'm excited to build some little European areas in my North American cities, and even build some European cities altogether, which is something you definitely would have never heard me say in the first game. So I'm really excited that they've really made some dramatic improvements to all the European themed stuff, at least in my personal opinion.
And it can't be changed later. There are 10 maps in the base game, each drawing inspiration from real-world locations. You might even recognize them. And with the vast area available on the new expanded maps, terrains are more varied, resources are more accessible, and there are more ways to connect to other cities. You'll discover maps where life is lived on the sandy beaches of a sprawling archipelago. Maps that invite you to build at high altitudes with a mountainside map, or along the winding waters of a rich river delta. There might even be a map that looks like the world outside your window.
One thing I've noticed as they're cycling through all these maps is just how much flat, buildable space there is. Even with the mountains surrounding, the rivers running through some of them, all of that, there's just so much flat space begging to be built on. It looks like the developers have really leveled up in their map making this time around. So I am really looking forward to getting in and building on literally all of these maps, at least from what I've seen so far.
Select the map that stirs your imagination to set the stage for life and living in the city of your dreams.
Okay, so it looks like that's it for this week's Featured Highlights video. What are you all thinking about maps and themes in Cities Skylines 2? For me, personally, as we've discussed, I have some mixed feelings, but overall, I'm really excited and personally think all the positives far outweigh any of the negatives. Again, I'd have liked to see more maps in the base game, but with a massive increase in the quality of the maps that I'm now expecting, I'm happy enough. I've pre-ordered the Ultimate Edition already anyway, so I'm going to get all 12. But even for people who just get the 10, if you find half of your 10 maps buildable, you're still better off than we were with Cities 1. Most of the maps we had didn't even feel playable to me, so... but anyway, I want to hear what you all think. Overall, are you guys happy with what we know now about maps and themes in Cities Skylines 2? Also, I want to try a little something new by having some fun in the comments section. If you've made it this far into the video, please leave a comment and let us all know whether your first city is going to be a North American or European themed city. I'll save my own answer for the comments section as well. But lastly, I truly appreciate you hanging out with me today and want to encourage you to consider subscribing if you haven't already and hitting that like button if you enjoyed today's video or found it informative. And if you didn't enjoy the video, feel free to leave a dislike as well. But with all that said, I want to thank you again, and I hope you all have a great day.